Hello, my dearest of friends. Sorry, I guess that's a little gay. Not homosexual gay. I mean the other definition of gay, where you're just saying like really gay things. I mean, I know you're not supposed to define a word with the word you're defining, but gay is so gay that like the word itself of gay actually describes gay really well. So it's just like one of those words that sounds like what it means. Kind of like the word odor. Doesn't the word odor just sort of sound like what it's about? All right, whatever. This isn't important. So, got some stories for you today, and then we'll do some hen histories. These stories are a variety of typical 2-5 behavior, of course. The first one is actually not a story of my own. I mentioned in episode 1 that I'll be telling stories like this as well. So this story I did not actually witness myself. A friend of mine told me what happened to him the other night. So technically this is all unproven, but I'm just going to take his word for all of it, and you should too, for the simple reason that this man is not an idiot. And that is actually one of the highest compliments you can pay to a person or have paid to you. And I feel more flattery from when someone tells me I'm not an idiot than if they tell me I'm either super intelligent and or super sexy. Now that might be because I hear those things at least 10 times a day, plus I'm still getting flooded with emails from hot women every day clamoring oh so hard to have me interview them on the show. But either way, boy, whenever you meet someone that is not an idiot, it's just like, wow, I am just like sunrunning humanity right now. Anyway, so here's his story. All I know is, and this is really all that matters, is he bet $400 on the river using all $25 green chips with what proved to be the best hand. He got called because he is better than just about everybody in the 2-5 field, except for me, of course. I mean, that goes without saying. I don't even know why I said it, But when the guy called him, he didn't put out $400. He just threw in $200 with a couple black chips to indicate he's calling. But before he called, as he was thinking, he asked the dealer with his mouth, how much is the bet? And the dealer told him in front of everybody that the bet was $400. But for some reason, this man was now vehemently refusing to throw in the other $200 he owes to the winner. And it's really like so unbelievable that a person could even think of trying to pull a stunt like this. That this is something that could even cross a person's mind. Now, it's never happened to me before, thankfully. But the dealer is telling him, you owe him that money, and look, there is just no ifs, ands, or buts about any of this. This is not even a black and white situation. It's just black. You lose. End of story. But it's still not getting resolved. And you know what the player's argument was? He was claiming that he was colorblind and that he didn't know the bet was $400, even though the dealer had already told him what the bet was, which he heard with his ears. So this would be like telling your 5th grade music teacher that the reason you can't learn to play the piano is because you have a poor sense of smell. I mean, the absolute disgusting nerve of this piece of shit. He should have been 86th right on the spot just for trying this, okay? Because now, let's do some mathematics, all right? I told you up front that when he bet the $400, they were in $25 green chips. Well, 400 divided by 25 is 16. That means my friend put across the betting line 16 betting discs. There are but 3 denominations of chips used in a poker room that are smaller than the $25 greens. So that means he could have bet $16 in $1 blue chips. Except, no, that's impossible because you cannot bet in any other increment of 2-5 besides in a $5 increment. Unless you are all in, of course, which my friend was not. And since this man claimed to only be colorblind, then surely he was aware of the other stacks of chips in front of my friend, regardless if he was able to discern all the pretty colors from one another. So, okay. Dollar chips are out. Next up is the $5 red chip, your money chip at 2-5. Well, Had there been 16 of those, 16 times 5 is $80. That's a lot less than $200. And lastly is the $10 light blue chip, which is never used in any game below 510. Although every so often some schmuck who's waiting to play 510 sits down with a rack of $10 chips, and now we have to waste all this fucking time changing them out. And it's just like, asshole, did you just happen to not notice that there's not a single player in this section of the room that has even one $10 chip in their stack? It reminds me of this time I was watching this animal documentary. I was super stoned. It was awesome. And it took place in Africa. And in this small body of water were dozens of hippopotamuses and one crocodile. And I was left to wonder if or how these animals were communicating, and if the crocodile perhaps was asking the hippos, "Am I in the wrong lake?" That's what the occasional jerk-off who sits down at 2.5 with $10 chips makes me think of. Now, you may have noticed I've mentioned crocodiles several times in several contexts on this podcast, and that is because they're awesome. They're 200 million years old. They were here before dinosaurs. They're still here. They're still at the top of the food chain. They're incredible swimmers. They can hold their breath underwater for 2 hours. They don't need to eat nearly as much as mammals do, and they will fuck you up so fast. They'll rip your head off, your arms off, your legs off. They'll eat you. So, they deserve recognition at a relatively high frequency. But anyway, so even if Mr. Colorblind thought my friend was betting 16 $10 chips, that's only $160. So where did he come up with being colorblind as a valid excuse and explanation as to why he only owes $200 when it's literally impossible for him to have owed that figure based on the number of exact physical betting discs that were wagered? And this, of course, was once again after already being told that the bet was $400. So they end up calling the floorman over for this. Oh my fucking God. And during this deliberation, my friend chose to walk away from the table, which is actually a pretty good idea. I mean, it doesn't matter either way, but I know I would have stayed for the entirety of this resolution, whether it concerned me or not, so I can make fun of the guy relentlessly as he absolutely deserved to be. But if you're not going to do that, then yeah, I mean, I guess it's not really necessary you be around for this nonsense. So yeah, I mean, eventually the guy paid the other remaining $200. I mean, what a surprise. My friend had also suggested to the floor to let him keep the $200 and just 86 him, and I respect that, even though that's not how this ended. But now check this. The day after this incident, the guy went up to my friend and apologized. And when he told me he apologized, I asked him, well, what exactly was he apologizing for? And he said he admitted he was wrong. Oh, okay. Well, after thinking about that a little more, no, he wasn't wrong. He would have to become exponentially more noble for the next 50 years. Then he'd be wrong. This was an attempted robbery, and this was also an assault and rape of other people's time, wasting it on this unthinkable, unimaginable, unfathomable, wow. An actual baby would not have cried over this defeat as much as this guy. But okay, all ended up right in the world, so on we go. Story number 2. Now this happened on Saturday night. My session was still pretty new, and then a new player joined to my right. He opened, and he got at least 1 or 2 calls. I wasn't paying that close attention to this hand until things started to get interesting. The flop was 8, 9, 10 with 2 hearts, and one of the blinds had checked and called from the original raiser. The turn was an offsuit queen, so any jack makes it straight, and king jack is the nut straight. He checks again, and the open raiser bet 125, which was probably a good 2/3 of the pot, maybe more. And then the other guy jams for what looked to be about 600 total. So the other guy is thinking, and he's thinking. We're not approaching needing to call the clock just yet. I mean, it wasn't that long, but he's been thinking. And then he asks the dealer for a count. And sometimes, like they did this time, the players spoke up and told the guy who was thinking how much money the guy who went all in had. And this, of course, was in an effort to speed up the game. So the dealer counts down the fucking money, and then the guy calls. The river was a brick, and the all-in guy shows his hand, I think it was Jack 5 of hearts. So he had the straight with the flush draw, but that missed. And then the other guy turns over his hand, and you know what he had? Just King Jack. Just the fucking nuts.
Whoa!
And I gotta tell you, the guy who got stacked in this hand, who probably thought at bare minimum he's chopping, maybe even doubling up, took this very well. I mean, he just looked up at the guy kind of perplexed and kind of amused that this guy just slow rolled the fuck out of him. He sure took it better than I would have. I mean, I wouldn't have had like a conniption, but there is no way I would have kept my mouth shut over that. So the guy is stacking up his chips. Now me and some other regs, we exchanged a few glances with each other of amusement of like, what the hell was that about? And then I said, hero call! So a few people laughed. And the guy who won this hand was on my right, and he looked kind of amused too. But I couldn't tell at first if he was even aware that he was being trolled, and that if he was, if he even knew why, because he was a brand new face, and sometimes even at 2-5, you get people who have basically never played poker before, and won't realize what they just did is often considered offensive, or even why that is the case. But as I saw a few hours later, this guy absolutely knew what he did, because I had changed tables, and then a little while later he joined my table, and then I started telling the table about what he did. Now, I wasn't like tearing into him, but I was giving him shit for it, and he wasn't upset or even embarrassed. I mean, he was laughing about it. He even made a comment about it, supporting what he did, saying something like, oh, like, I had to make it dramatic. Okay. I mean, the only thing I'll give him credit for is just rolling with the punches when I was making fun of him for this. Because if you're going to do that to somebody, you're getting on both knees and begging people to give you shit for it. These things don't occur often, but they're not such a rarity, so I don't even get why I still act so surprised when I see this. So I don't know, I guess I'm just holding out hope that, one day people will decide to grow up in at least the most minor of ways when they're playing poker. But the funniest thing about this whole situation is what happened just a few hours earlier. I was hanging out with another friend. I mean, I have so many friends, it's unbelievable, but the subject of slow rolling came up somehow, and he said that he doesn't really do it and doesn't want it done to him, but when it is, he just thinks it's funny and that it's even good for the game. Now, his first argument was that you're not entitled to find out right away that you lost. And then, on top of that, what's the difference anyway if you find out now or if you find out in 12 seconds that you're beat, because you're going to lose either way? And okay, I mean, you can't refute any of that. And his other argument was is that it's going to tilt the fuck out of people, and getting people on tilt is what we want to have happen to other people. And, American poker players were pretty much taught that slow rolling is the absolute dirtiest thing you can do to somebody. That isn't cheating, of course. And I agree that it is, so that's why people find it so tilting. And he's certainly not wrong that people tilting is a good thing. But as I've said many times now, I mean, poker is a gentleman's game, and I just don't want to win that way. That's all. When I have bad news to give to somebody, I give it to them as fast as possible. Now, it's of course up to everybody how they want to choose to define what makes something gentlemanly or ungentlemanly, but to me, slow rolling is just being a bad winner, and, I know culturally it's considered really funny in some other countries, but I don't think it is. And, in a small pot, yeah, I mean, I guess it's pretty funny. And admittedly, I will slow roll sometimes when there's a chop, even when it's a big pot, but that is a far cry from doing it when you know you've got the winner. So I'm only going to do it when it's to somebody who's either done it to me, like Squeaky, or to others, because fuck them. Here's a taste of your own medicine. And some of them probably won't care, and good for them if they don't, because then they're at least being consistent. But otherwise, I just think of the golden rule. I try to treat people the way I want them to treat me. And since I don't want to be slow rolled, I won't slow roll others. Now, you can say I'm being hypocritical if I slow roll someone vengefully, and yeah, okay. But what I say to that is, fuck them. If you want to fight dirty, then you're going to get a dirty fight. And how many people have you dealt with in any situation where they wanted to play hardball until it was their turn to get into the box and hit? Yeah. Pussies. That's what those people are, and they're everywhere. So oftentimes, those who want to fight dirty are only okay with it until it's being done to them. once they taste their own medicine, now they get self-righteous and complain about why this isn't okay. Yeah. Spoken like a true wannabe poker player. Alright, so, final story of this day. So there's been a new reg in town lately. He's young. I think he's Italian. He's got a pretty thick accent, but he's been amicable company. And he raises to 15 in the cutoff. He's very deep. Button calls, small blind calls, and I called the big blind with pocket fours. I got a dream flop. It was ace, king, queen, rainbow. We all checked. The turn was a deuce. We checked to the razor again, and he overbet. He bet 100 into 60. So all three of the other players are still in, but the button looked at him like he just tried to buy a pack of gum without paying for it. He even said, there's only $60 in it, and he made this big gesture with his arm as to how small the pot was. So he folds, obviously. Small blind folds, and then I jammed. With this line, I just don't think this guy ever has Jack 10, and even though I don't have any blockers to the nuts, I still think that... Alright, I'm kidding, I didn't fucking jam, okay? I folded. Jeez. And then he shows a deuce. But when he showed that deuce, I don't think he looked back at both of his cards. He just turned one of them over. And if that is the case, then he obviously had a set of deuces. Now, as I just said, I don't think he looked back at both of his cards, but either way, I kind of just wanted an excuse to talk some shit, so I told him, you didn't check to see which card you were turning over because they were both the same. Now, I didn't catch his entire response, but he for sure said something like, I had two cards. I said, I know you had two cards. That part I was sure of. I was just saying that you had a set of deuces. Now look, I'm going to give this guy a slight break since English is clearly not his first language, so he may have been trying to say something different than what words he actually spoke, but no. He's still a 2-5 player, so therefore I am not giving him the entire benefit of the doubt, no way. And that right there is a pretty typical 2-5 response. And this is precisely why I made the joke after he showed the deuce, to see what cleverness he comes back with in return. I had two cards. Okay, thank you. Nice hint. One other thing I want to mention. I really had to contain myself from cracking up when that other guy was blown away that the Italian player had overbet the pot to the point where he was talking about it and gyrating with his arms, acting as though you're never supposed to do something like that. Like you're always supposed to just bet, I don't know, maybe up to the size of the pot. He was an older Asian guy, so who knows? Maybe he used to play pot limit hold'em. But either way, there are so many reasons why the 2-5 player pool is so fishy. I mean, you could point to endless examples of it, but if you really want the simplest reason, you hardly ever see an overbet. And case in point, because look how this guy responded to it when he did see one. Now, there are, of course, tons of complexities to no limit hold'em, but overbetting is the essence of no limit hold'em. When there's no other game that allows you to bet all your money anytime it's your turn, then that trait is distinguishing enough that it's supposed to be a huge factor in the game because that's its primary distinction. So it's almost like people have tried to make a limit style out of a no limit game. And that's how you know someone can't possibly be that great at this game. Because if you're thinking on a meaningful level when you're playing, using an overbet strategy is not only something you do, it's something you should be doing pretty often. Now, I said I was going to do some hand histories, and I will. I just don't feel like doing it now. So it'll be out soon on the next episode. So thanks, guys. See you next time.